Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of 7 Heavenly Virtues. And today we are covering discipline. I would say of all the virtues that we have, discipline is the most desired by people. So discipline is the most glamorized. Discipline is the most sought after. This is the virtue that I think everyone is dying to have more of. That's the trend that I see. The biggest misconception when it comes to discipline is that discipline is coming from will and force. In my experience, that is not super sustainable. So the arc of discipline, when you have people that are really disciplined, most of the time that's actually coming from momentum. It's they're able to force themselves into doing something, and they're able to do that enough to where it becomes more automatic. And you can do that. You can. However, my experience with discipline is a lot different. It's more of the alignment-based discipline is how we could describe this. So going back to the original analogy, God is over here. Your shadow is over here. Orienting this way means connecting to God. Orienting anywhere else means you've disconnected temporarily. When you are connected, when you're looking this way, discipline is a natural byproduct. But once again, this is one of those things that requires all of the previous virtues that we've talked about. Discipline is more of, I wouldn't call it late stage, but it's one of those things where you have to have some experience under your belt to know what I'm talking about. You have to be able to see it firsthand, which means you've got to connect. You have to know that you need to orient in this direction in the first place. You have to have faith that the thing you're orienting towards is good and loves you and provides for you and all of those things. Those are necessary conditions. Then you have to be willing to take the guidance and do the things and to obey, right? You have to be willing to do that. And then the discipline is a natural byproduct of that. We could say the discipline is orienting towards God. That's a discipline, right? Making it a discipline to seek God first. That's a spiritual discipline. The other consequences is you taking care of all the things you've been wanting to take care of. When you're seeking God, connecting to God, discipline is a no-brainer, but it feels more effortless. And the reason for this, what I've found, is that if I'm connected to God and I'm juiced up, as I say, I'm full on God, I am not going to do that, feel like $1,000,000 because that's what happens when you're connected. I'm not going to be blissed out, feeling amazing, completely in this state of just utter receptivity and feeling full, and then go numb out on TikTok. That is not the next thing that happens. So when you're full, you want to do things because you have more eagerness. Because then it's, I want to take this fullness and do something with it. Then I want to cook a nourishing meal. Then I want to clean my kitchen. Then I want to enjoy a book. Then I want to do some writing. Then I want to go for a walk. Then I want to do these things that nourish me. And when people are talking about discipline, most of the time they're talking about nourishment and meeting their own needs. Most of the time. When you're full on God, you want to work on the project. You don't want to sit idly by and just let your energy deplete while you waste the moment. You want to capitalize on it. You want to move on it. And so discipline, there is value in disciplining yourself for the sake of generating momentum, for sure. But I find that the momentum can taper off. I can break momentum easily. It is much easier to maintain momentum than to start over, right? Initiating and starting momentum is the most difficult part. This is why people struggle with New Year resolutions. This is why people have difficulty starting and maintaining new habits. And so what I have found over and over and over is the more I connect, the more I want to do the things that are meaningful and important to me. And that includes the disciplines that I have not been doing, the disciplines that I've been meaning to get to, or that I've been allowing myself to get distracted with other things. I think it's a funny Christian saying, so it's one of my favorites just because it's so dramatic. It's like the voice of the enemy. Satan is tempting you. Satan is distracting you. I think about it not in the literal sense, but just in a figure of expression. But there is something to be said about that we are constantly facing the temptation of distraction and numbness. That's something that we're constantly dealing with on a day-to-day basis. The solution: seek God first. Connect to God first. Look over here first. Discipline is over here. The meal planning and the working out and the taking care of yourself and the doing things that are important to you and the working on the projects is over here. Your inspiration is over here. I have tested this and tested this and tested this. When I am, like we've talked about with the idolatry, when I am worshiping my own will and my own force, discipline does not come easily to me. I screw around. I get distracted. I break momentum. I'm inconsistent. I'm all that. When I look here first, then it's like, how can I allow this fullness to spill over into my life? How can I allow it to overflow into my life? As I've been foreshadowing a conversation that we have coming up, because this is one of the things that will happen when you're continually connected. Then you wonder how people make so much of the 24 hours that they have in the day. Well, if they're juiced up on God, you feel like you have boundless energy. You can achieve 30 times more, 100 times more. The fruit of your action compounds. All of that occurs because you're operating from this connected place of being tapped into a supernatural source. Not brain power or physical power, but a supernatural source of energy that has all the guidance and all the right next moves and all the right next steps. And it has your priorities straight because there's a self-organizing principle to this. So there's a divine order that comes from God. In the same way, this is one of the main philosophical arguments of people who believe in God versus atheists. It's the divine order, the cosmic order. So it stands to reason that there is a consciousness beyond because of the order of the universe. Because all the planets are spinning in perfect proximity to each other. Because everything just has this intricate balance. This divine order is at play, and that's an indication that there is a consciousness beyond. So that's one of the primary arguments in favor of God, essentially. One of the extensions of that is that when you seek this consciousness first, there is divine order in that consciousness. This removes all of the guesswork. Have you ever gone to a project and felt overwhelmed, God is not overwhelmed with your projects. God is not over here like, oh boy, that's too much. That's a lot. I don't even know where to begin. That's a human thing. That's an us thing. That's when we rely on our own minds. If I understand that there's divine organization that is coming from this source, then I seek the source first. I seek God first. And the byproduct is a natural self-organizing principle that already has the right order of operations lined up for me. So I will be inspired to the right next thing at the right time. One of the things that confuses people about what do I do, when do I do it, what's the right next step, is they get trapped in the mind, and the mind will quickly overwhelm you. Where instead, if you can allow the right next piece to come to you and just act on the right next piece, that will smooth everything out. Side note, I do have a big announcement about Apex. It's connected to the discipline topic of today. So I had an Apex client who was being led to do some things. She's in real estate, and she was being led to do some things for her real estate career. And it was interesting because she was asking me for more inspiration. She was asking me like, well, do you have any more ideas? And what I told her was, you need to act on what you've already been led to do, because you've already received the right next steps. If you start gorging yourself on inspiration, you're going to get overwhelmed. So it's important that you are willing, right? You've received the guidance. Now you actually need to be willing to act on it. Don't seek more ideas. Sorting through piles of ideas is overwhelming. And I'm telling you, as someone who is constantly giving ideas away, you go make this. I'm not going to do it. You go make this. This idea isn't for me. I have to give ideas away all the time. Let me just say, my channel for ideas is clear. And so I have too many. You should see the notes section of my phone. It's a black hole of infinite ideas. I can't be acting. In one lifetime, I cannot do all of the ideas that I have in mind. You don't want to be in that position. You don't want to add an additional source of overwhelmment. That is unwise. If you're receiving the right next piece, act on the right next piece, because you have a cleaner view. You don't have to deal with this additional dimension of clutter. So just be willing to act on the thing, because understand that when you're connected over here, the right next step has already presented itself. There's always a right next step. And when you get better at listening and being willing to do the thing, it looks like it presents as discipline. If you're just willing to get connected, familiarize yourself with connection. That's an important piece. Familiarize yourself with connection so that you know what it feels like. This is one of the reasons why I have moving prayer inside church, is because you just need to get familiar with, what does it feel like to be in the presence of God? What does it feel like to be connected? What does it feel like to move with it? And we're not practicing that most of the time. Unless you are one of those people who's in a continual flow state, and the people who are most practiced at that are people who have a creative discipline that they're doing regularly. So you're an athlete. So if you're an athlete and you're training all the time, you're probably getting into those flow states a lot. Or if you have a craft of some sort, so a musical instrument, if you play music or you have some artistic outlet, you have probably felt that flow state quite a lot. But a lot of people are not tapping into that flow state, which is just connection. That's all it is. I'm just getting connected. And then, if there's people who are in that flow state often, that's what we perceive as being disciplined. If you're looking at an Olympian that's constantly training, it looks like discipline. It looks like someone that has a ton of willpower. I argue that is connection. That is, I am seeking God. I am connected to God. I have a vision for my own potential. I'm tapped into a vision that comes from God. I'm connecting here, and then I'm achieving a flow state, and I can keep going and going and going and showing up for it and showing up for it and showing up for it, not because of just will, but because it feels good. Showing up for something meaningful feels good. Executing on projects feels good. Being distracted and numbed out does not feel good. And this is one of the reasons why I think Apex has been my most popular and sought after container, because it's completely discipline focused. And people are really craving, like, I want to see what happens to my life when I am not perpetually numbed out and when I'm not continually distracted. Because it cleans up. The discipline issue has more to do with the competition that it's facing with distraction. If you had no distractions, you wouldn't feel undisciplined. The only reason why you feel undisciplined is because you give in to the temptation of distractions, or you are seeking your own mind. You're seeking a to-do list. You're seeking, how can I take action enough in order to cram this goal into reality, rather than connecting first. Discipline is a fruit. It's a byproduct. It's a consequence of connection. You don't have to muscle your way into these things nearly as much. When you are connected, you want to be good to yourself. You want to do the right thing. Whatever that is, whatever is congruent with your values and vision. Discipline is a fruit going on my wall. Yeah. It is. When I'm feeling undisciplined, what does that mean? I'm not connected to God. That's what that means. That's what that's an indication of. I have given in to other temptations or other distractions. Because I know when I'm connected, it's like, I want to write. I want to get things done. I want to make things happen. I'm inspired. I want to go for a walk. Like I said in the beginning, I want to eat a nourishing meal. I want to clean my kitchen. I want to do all of that stuff because I'm so connected and overflowing, because I'm so full. You are not going to get connected and then just let it stay stagnant. There's just no way. There's just no way. I personally cannot pray, and then not be inspired to action. That's completely illogical. I can be having a hard time and pray, but then more than likely at some point I'm going to go take a nap, go take a shower, go eat something, there's going to be inspiration on the back end. People who take care of themselves appear disciplined. Some people are able to achieve it just through maintaining momentum. I have not been able to do that personally, so that's not what I preach. I'm like, I don't know about the rest of you. I can't do that. In the same way, I can't listen to Norman and live a good life. The stats, the numbers, I can't live that way. The economy, I can't focus on the economy and feel good about finances and feel like there's more than enough for me. I can't look at the housing market and feel connected to my dream home at the same time. The housing market will distract me from the vision that's over here sitting with God. This is the exact same. So any distraction we perceive as being undisciplined. Calling discipline flow makes so much more sense. I understand flow. I love flow. I'm unlearning so many of these messages of my church upbringing. What does the church say about this? Keep in mind, I have no religious background. Like, I was exposed to a lot of religion, but I'm learning so much about religious programming from these conversations that I've been having. This even came up yesterday. We had grace journaling for June inside church, and someone brought up the idea. I was playfully talking about God's plan, and that brought up a whole bunch of church messaging, but I was like, I don't even know what the church says about God's plan. And so it's interesting because I'm getting all of this feedback from people about church programming, which I have none. So I don't have a good pulse on some of the things that come from the church. I'm like, I don't know what they're saying over there. The perspective on discipline. Discipline is difficult, punishing, and painful. Connection only comes from self-sacrifice and denial. Catholic programming is schizophrenic. It's a loving God who might speak to you if you're well enough behaved or self-denying enough. There's a lot to unpack here. Self-sacrifice. This is such an interesting thing. My view on sacrifice is that when you say yes to something, you're always saying no to another. So in every yes and no, a sacrifice is being made. When you say yes to doing dishes, you're saying no to a dirty sink. You are sacrificing the dirty sink. So sacrifice is just an aspect of duality on the planet. It's an aspect of the earth plane. It's the same thing as shadow and light. So in every moment that you entertain a bad thought, you're sacrificing a good thought in that moment. When you're saying yes to an action, you're saying no to complacency. So there's a perpetual sacrifice that is always being made. There is something to be said about when I say no to certain temptations. So for example, when I say no to worry and I sacrifice my worry and I seek God instead, and I entrust God with the situation instead, or I pray instead, I've sacrificed the worry and I've instead supplemented with prayer or trusting God or connecting to God. People associate sacrifice with Jesus a lot of the time, like sacrificing your life, give up your life for me. I have a lot of issues with the New Testament, and we're kind of brushing up into those issues right now as we're talking. But the way I see sacrifice is just the nature of duality. Let me see what you all are saying. Okay, good. I'm glad you all are liking this. I never thought of it as something that included good and bad things. Yes, something is always being sacrificed. It is not necessarily, I am sacrificing the joy of my heart. I'm sacrificing the things that I love. That defies connection to God. Remember, all the stuff you love is over here. There is no one that I've met who has said, getting blackout drunk feels good. Overindulging until I feel sick feels good. Allowing my body to be used in ways that is disheartening, feels good. No, it doesn't. But when you're connected to God, you're not going to seek those things because you're full. Then it's like, can you imagine what would happen if you're connected, and then the food choices that you make from that connection, and then the habit decisions that you make from that connection, and then the business decisions that you make from that connection, the relationship decisions that you make from that connection? What happens to your sexual intimacy when you're connected to this like potent source of love and joy and bliss? If it's the uptight bearded man in the clouds that you have in mind, that's programming. So this is where your perception of this source of energy usually comes, for a lot of people, with a lot of baggage. And when these people are saying, these religious people, the Pharisees of earth, the modern day Pharisees, when they are talking about sin feels good, no, the fuck it does not. No, it does not. You cannot convince me of that. Sin, disconnecting from God, does not feel good. And I will die on this hill. So the way I see sin, and I describe this in the 7 Deadly Shadows, is anytime you've disconnected. So when you disconnect and you start worrying instead of praying or seeking God, that's a sin. And I don't mean that with like shame, you're going to go to hell if you keep doing that. It's you're going to create hell on earth if you keep doing that. Like if you're in a constant state of worry, you're going to live a tormented life because it's not going to feel good. All the fruit's over here. And you're not going to pick it because you're too busy disconnecting. You do that long enough. That leads you to hell. But hell is something that I believe only exists on earth. If we want to talk about what is hell, what was Jesus talking about with hell? The translation, again, in the Bible study that I've done, is that hell is the translation of the word Gehenna. Gehenna was a physical place where they would do child sacrifice. So it was named the place of divine punishment because one of the first things in the Bible that God is like, you got to cut it out with that, is human sacrifice. So as humanity was evolving, the consciousness of humanity is evolving, one of the things that came up was, we don't need to be sacrificing humans. That was like one of the baby steps toward a more peaceful world, okay? Even though there's war and destruction that still exists on the planet, Gehenna was the place. I could be wrong, but that's what my research led me to. And so my understanding was being cast into a place of divine punishment was a physical place. It was over there, that scary city over there that has lots of disconnection from God, that is sacrificing humans. You're going to be over there in that place of divine punishment. In all of the traumas that you're seeing, like when an addict goes and uses drugs, they're not in a state of feeling good. It's either an extension of a traumatic event that they're trying to numb out and blunt the sensation of, or it's a form of possession. That's a different conversation for a different day. But that does not feel good. That does not feel good. Addicts are seeking relief, but they're not seeking it from God. And so it's always short-lived, and then it doesn't lead to anything good. And then you can imagine if you're seeking relief, not over here where it's actually at, but through other things, when they're worshiping a drug, that does not feel good. My definition of sin is vast and broad. It is far, 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 far beyond what is outlined in the Bible. Because, like I said, it doesn't say, thou shalt not scroll on TikTok. But I would say, if you're doom scrolling on TikTok, you are disconnected. It's difficult to maintain your connection to God and scroll on TikTok at the same time because you're being so bombarded with thought forms. So it's real hard. Can it be done? Yeah, but it's tough. Specifically with that platform. And so much of what people are saying feels good. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? That makes absolutely no sense. Drugs and alcohol do not feel as good as receiving the love of God. And if you disagree, you've never really felt the ecstasy that comes from the love of God. Getting all juiced up on that, there's nothing like it. The peace that surpasses all understanding, the love that makes you want to explode, the inspiration that propels you into action. It is delightful. So I completely disagree with this whole idea of like sin is tempting because it feels good. No, you are seeking something that could come from God, but you're seeking it through other means. And the fruit of worshiping other gods is not going to be the delightful, supernatural fruits that come from over here. Because again, God has your stuff. God has your stuff. There's so much wicked messaging, even though it's not technically official anymore, it's still pervasive. For sure, because God and religion are not the same thing. The biggest work that I see so many people doing is detangling God and religion. That's why it's like I'm not associated with any religion because I disagree with all of them. And I would assume that religious people would consider me a heretic. Absolute heresy, false teachings, whatever. All I know is that the people who are coming into my orbit are misfits who have been disenchanted with religion and have abandoned God in the process, and that bums me out. Because God has all the stuff. And so people have stopped going to the place where all the stuff is. And so it's like, I end up getting all of the people who have been rejected or disenchanted or who have completely just been turned off by the church. So I'm kind of in this no man's land. I don't know. I'm just out here doing my own thing. Resisting control is pleasurable, which is where I think the idea that sin is pleasurable comes from. That is rooted in a specific conception of God. So remember how we talked about obedience? And I was like, there's a lot of trauma around the idea of obedience because it's laced up with, I'm not going to get what I want. I'm not going to get my stuff. I'm going to listen to God, but then nothing good is going to come from it. It's just going to be a life filled with mediocrity and suffering, and all of these uptight Christians or uptight religious people are living lives that are stale, bland, and are not glorifying God in any way. If you think that you're going to be controlled when you're going to God, or you're going to be put in situations that really don't feel good, then yeah, you're going to resist that with all your might. And this is where we come back to, okay, do you believe that you are being loved and supported by a God that wants to do miraculous things with your life, that has your stuff, that you've been communicating with your entire life, that has kept score of every single time you didn't like something and you wanted something different instead, that has all that information, that has counted every hair on your head, that considers you to be one of the most important creations in the universe and has explicit, focused attention on you and wants to blow you away if you let him. Do you believe in that God? If not, then yeah, why surrender? Why listen? Why cooperate with that? That sucks. But that God that I just described, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's the God that I'm like, yes, I want that. Yes, juice me up. Yes, tell me what to do. Boss me around, zaddy. That's why it then becomes something that it's like, oh my God, I can't get enough. Yeah, I want to keep going to that well. Yeah. What do you have for me today? What are you telling me to do today? What should we do? Where should I go? Who should I talk to? Who should I call? Now I want to listen. Now I want to follow. Because of all the miraculous things that are going to come from there. But that is dependent on your idea of God. That is the linchpin in this situation. I was working through if you're a good girl, you might get what you want. Otherwise, punishment. That sounds like Santa, scarier. Instead of the coal, you go to hell. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. I did a podcast episode. This was sometime in December of last year that I recorded this podcast. It was Nobody Has the Same God. I think I referenced that a couple days ago in here. One of the things that I talk about was I was listening to some ex-Mormons that were talking. And one of the illuminating moments that one of the women who was speaking had was after she had her son, she was really taken aback by the entire experience and her understanding of God, because she was like, this child that I love so much, this is supposed to be the relationship that I have with God. I don't want him to suffer. I don't want him to go without. I don't want him to be in pain. I don't want any of that stuff. I don't want him to be endlessly disciplined. I don't want to suck the joy out of his life. It's like it shattered that entire illusion about this punishing God. Because if it's supposed to be a genuinely loving God, you do not want to harm the person that you love. That completely defies the idea of a loving God. It's like somewhere along the line, religion like cooked up this punishing God that was like, oh yeah, you're gonna walk into this trap. I've got some horrible things in store for you. No, get out of here with that. Get out of here with that. I rebuke that shitty God. No, not in my house. God wants to delight you. He wants to surprise you. He wants to love you. He wants to adore you. He wants to provide for you. That is what is constantly being blasted at you. But if you continually run towards other things, you can't get the goods. He cannot force them upon you. He can try to occasionally give you breadcrumbs, but until you actually go and cultivate the relationship, then it won't, the full magnitude of the glory can't shine upon you. So no, the idea of punishment, the other thing that I talk about a lot is God is holding the forward-most point of your evolution. So this idea that you're on a naughty list, if that's what you believe, then you're probably not going to go be intimate with God. Like, you're just not going to develop that relationship, and I don't blame you. I've brought up Abraham Hicks on multiple occasions throughout this because there's a very clean explanation that they use. If it feels good or relatively better, then it's coming from over here. That's the light trying to get your attention. If it feels good, it's coming from here. If it feels bad, it's coming from something else. That's it. So if you might go to hell, does that feel good? You might be cast into a fiery place of darkness and torture. Does that feel good? No, then it's not coming from God. That's a very clean way to understand it. And as far as I'm concerned, I've said this before and I'm going to double down on it. If God is this entity that will only love me if I'm good, if I'm perfect, and if I don't achieve that, I'm going to hell, fine. If you've listened to the cumulative around the world, the thousands and thousands of near-death experiences, I think it's pretty clear that there's just one place that we go to when we die. And I find near-death experiences to be more revealing and more evidence of the truth of what God feels like, because they've had the experience of going to that place and then dropping back down into their body because they were clinically dead. In order for it to be a near-death experience, you have to literally die. You have to be physically, medically dead. And there is too much consistency in what people describe, which is like nothing bothers them anymore. It's just this lucid, ultra consciousness where they're in pure love. So it's not going to feel punishing or threatening. It just, there's too much evidence from real people. And it's not just in one sample size in one network. This is a global. This is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of experiences. So that is something that I find very reassuring myself. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you should go check it out. Theo Vaughn did an interview with this guy who studies near-death experiences. Go watch that. If you are afraid of hell, go watch that episode. We had to do that all the time in my religious upbringing, sacrificing what we love. This is blowing my mind. I'm so glad that I can burst that bubble for you. So here's the other thing. If you have noticed, and this is like, I'm towing a very fine line with this because I do understand that there is something to be said about when your well-being becomes dependent on something, even if it's good, and not wanting to idolize that thing because it's inconsistent, right? So we talked about that before. I could have the best relationship on earth. I could be in a glorious relationship with a man who loves me and takes excellent care of me and like just the best of the best of the best, A+. If I put my well-being in the relationship and I'm not continually getting it from God, then the relationship suffers and so do I. And I'm not going to be steady and consistent because I'm not going to the place of consistency. It's now dependent on the relationship. But when we're talking about sacrifice, that could be something like, it doesn't mean throw away the relationship. It means, where are you focusing? Where are you getting your replenishment? And instead of trying to be codependent with this person by saying, you need to make me feel good. You need to behave in a certain way so I feel better. I don't want you to be in a bad mood, or I don't want you to be upset so that I can feel better and I can feel steady. That's dysfunctional. That's codependent. So what is being sacrificed is your codependency, and instead you're going to God. You're connecting here first. This is kind of a foreshadow of what we're going to be talking about on harmony, because that's the harmony is the counter teaching. It's the virtue that counters codependency. And so when people are talking about sacrifice, I'm sacrificing my codependency. I'm sacrificing me needing you to behave a certain way in order for me to feel good, because that does us both harm. If I disconnect from God in favor of needing you to be a certain way, that is my definition of sin. Sin is that moment when I'm trying to get my replenishment from you. It does not mean that I need to break up with someone or end a marriage or do something like that. It's just I have to stop doing that, and I have to reprioritize my relationship over here, because then that will sort, again, the self-organizing principle of connection, that will sort the rest of it out. The other thing, if you have something that you love, but you're numbing with it and you're no longer prioritizing your relationship or connection to God, then that can end up becoming more of a distraction. So then it falls into some gray area, and it's like the consequence of just temporarily disconnecting isn't death. It's the momentum of what happens when I've temporarily disconnected, and the momentum that is gained from there. Most of the time, it is easy to go to God when you're suffering. When you're in pain, when you don't have something that you want, when you are in a sticky situation, or you need help and you need it right now, then it's easy to go to God. But when you have everything that you want, you'll turn away. And it won't be a 180, it'll be 2 degrees. It'll be, I was over here before I had all my stuff, and then I oriented 2 degrees away. And then 4. And then 16. You get what I'm saying? Like, you start slowly shifting away from God. And over time, with momentum, that's when you start getting into trouble. Not because God is mad at you, but because it's painful. Anything outside of here comes with a certain amount of pain with enough momentum. You're not being punished. The idea of punishment from God is misalignment. I'm not doing as God is instructing me. I'm off doing my own thing. When God has the goods, God has all your stuff. So when you feel deprived, it's because you've oriented away. When you're focusing over here, doubt doesn't even enter your mind because you're juiced up. Doubt is, okay, I've oriented away. And then you feel bad because you've oriented away. That's why the Abraham Hicks definition of this is so clean and easy to understand. You're disconnected, you feel bad. You're connected, you feel good. The more connected you are, the better you feel. The more disconnected you are, the worse you feel. That's it. That's the metric. Divine threats, that's coming from a disconnected place. That's coming from a thought form that originated in humans, in other disconnected humans, not God. And as I was studying the Bible for the first time, I kept seeing all of these bad outcomes. Right? Like it didn't go our way, or something bad happened, or God flooded the earth, or whatever. The more misaligned you are, the more disconnected you are, the worse things get, because it's trying to guide you back over here. I like the idea that misalignment is oriented away. Yes, rather than misalignment means I'm doing it wrong or not well enough. Yes, 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 yes. All day, it is damn near impossible to stay connected 24 hours a day. So you're doing this all the time, depending on what bait you're taking or how distracted you are. You're not perpetually here, because if you were perpetually here, you'd be dead. That's what death is. Again, go look at those near-death experiences. If you have not studied near-death experiences, that clears a lot up. It's too consistent for it to not be legitimate. Truth is consistent. The perfectionism that has come from religion has really just turned so many people off. It's made them scared and fragile, which is why, we're talking about discipline today. The counterpart teaching to this is fragility. Because it's in the moment you turn away, or in the moment you take the bait about something, you fall apart, or you stop doing the things that are important to you, or you dwell there for a lot longer. That's why fragility is a shadow. Is there was a trigger that happened externally. Someone pushed a button, someone behaved in a way that I didn't want them to behave, and now I'm falling apart rather than reconnecting from God. When you're connected to God, you are steady and you are emotionally and mentally and physically disciplined. That is the benefit of doing this. Because if I'm connected to God and someone says something that I don't like, but my eyes are fixed over here, I'm unbothered. I'm at peace. But most of the time, if someone says something that you don't like or that hurts your feelings, instead of keeping your eyes fixed, you're like, oh no, now I feel bad. I wish they wouldn't have said that. I wish they wouldn't have done that. And then you're falling apart. And that's what leads to greater and greater pain. So being able to keep your eyes fixed makes you steady and it makes you consistent emotionally as well, right? If I'm worried or I'm angry or I'm upset, but then I'm going into prayer, communication, feeling and reaching for God, all the relief is over here. All the peace is over here. Recently, I had life events that caused dysregulation and disconnection. It was very unpleasant and I knew exactly why I felt that way. That is why I feel such a pull to develop a stronger spiritual practice on the other side. When you are stable in your connection, it does not mean that you're never, ever, ever going to have an unpleasant experience ever again. What it means is that you will line up with solutions a lot faster, that things can resolve much quicker. If I'm connected to God and then there's a little problem, God's got the answer. God has the solutions. So then I can sync up with that and put my faith in that and then be willing to follow the instructions that come from that connected place. And then it cleans everything up. So many situations will be cleaned up just from a continual orientation towards God. Because again, if you're feeling like it's not happening, you've turned your face away from God. When you turn towards God, it feels like it's at your fingertips. It's right there. It's right there. Then you're connected to the vision. Then you're connected to like these juicy, again, I'm using the word plans, but I know that comes with a lot of baggage for a lot of you who have religious trauma. But literally, like if you think about the blueprint is over here for all the stuff that I want, and I want to get a glimpse of that blueprint. Why would I turn away? Why would I turn away when it's like it's on my front door, my front doorstep? Why would I turn away from that? I want to feel that. I want to feel like I'm continually on the precipice of amazing things. And when you're connected to God, that's how you feel. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Yeah, I want to take time out of my day for that. Yeah, I want to have a spiritual practice with that. Yes, I want to listen. So it's all of the solutions live there. And I am not one of those people, again, because I'm a very bad girl. I'm a heretic. The religious people would never approve of my blasphemous teachings. I reject this idea of waiting. I completely reject the idea that I have to wait patiently for God. I'm going to be waiting such a long time. Connection to God does not feel like waiting. What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean waiting season? That's absurd. I posted a video yesterday because this has been coming up in 7 Heavenly Virtues. It came up in Grace Journaling, and I made a video about it today. I posted it on my YouTube. You don't need to wait for manifestations. And what I was talking about is everyone wants to refer to the wilderness, right? In the Bible, when the Israelites were wandering around the desert for decades. And everyone ignores the fact that the whole reason why they were wandering around for that amount of time was because they weren't listening and they weren't taking the guidance. That's why there was a delay. Everyone is like, waiting for God. God has all the stuff right now. God has all of these wonderful back roads and scenic routes and highways for you to get to what you want. But you have to attune yourself to feel for the guidance. That is where the spiritual discipline of continuing to seek God comes in, because this will expedite everything. None of this waiting. If you feel like you're waiting, you've turned away. If you feel like you need to be patient, you've turned away. God is now. God is right now. God is in everything. In the way that you're moving and preparing and all of the actions that you're taking, all the micro steps that are going on. It feels like a very active process. This isn't passive. I'm not into this whole waiting thing. Because if you understand that the action or the discipline that comes out of this connection will speed you along your path, if you really hear that and listen to that and execute on that, you're going to see it do supernatural things in your life, because that's what you're hooking up to. You're not hooking up to these like limited and restricted sources like the economy, the numbers, the stats. Can you speak on God's timing versus our timing with regards to impatience? When I mention impatience, I meant with on God's time. Okay, God's time is now. Let's detangle the idea that there is like a person with an ego who is pulling the strings. So God's time does not mean when I feel ready to bless you. That's not what God's time is. We could say God is energetically holding the state that you need to achieve. That's the state that you are aspiring to be congruent with. If you were in total congruency with God, everything would happen now. That's another way to put it. But you are at a certain degree of congruency in any moment, right? There's degrees of connection or degrees of disconnection. The more connected you are, the faster things go. The more disconnected you are, the more things feel like they're going really slow. So usually when people are talking about impatience, it's because they're looking at everything but God's perspective. It's you're orienting all over the place. It's not here yet. Where is it? It hasn't hit my bank account yet. You're all over here. And then you're wondering why it's going slow when you're not connecting here. Here's the other thing, specifically about money. Most of the time, it's like the 3 hot button issues for people are health, money, and love. Those are the big 3. Health, money, and love. I'm sure most of you fall into one of those categories. And so with money, the thing that I'm constantly telling people is if you are looking at your bank account right now, and you're like, it's not here yet, it's not here yet, it's not here yet. Well, no shit. Most of your day is it's not here yet. The payments haven't hit yet, the payments haven't hit yet, the payments haven't hit yet. And it's like, what? Are you just going to live your life in a momentary state of the it's here yet thing? Like that state that you're in when a payment comes through, when a paycheck comes, when you receive money is that fast, and then it's gone. So what most people are doing is like, it's not here yet, it's not here yet, it's not here yet, it's not, oh, it's here. Okay, it's not here yet, it's not here yet. Or with love, the love version of this is, where's my man, 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 where's my man? Okay, it's here. When are we going to get engaged? When are we going to get engaged? When are we going to get engaged? So most people are spending their lives orienting away from God, and then they feel that impatience because they're agonizing over seeking everything but heaven, we could say, the holding place, the dwelling place of God, where all the thoughts, all the perspectives, all the feelings, all the visions, the inspired action, all that stuff, your stuff is over here, but you're not disciplining yourself to look here. You've got to look over here. Because if you look over here, then all of a sudden it's like the money's on the way. It feels so good. God's blessing me. It's about to happen at any moment. It feels like it's happening now. Like it's already on the way. It's already in motion. You feel the motion when you're connected here. So it never feels passive. It never feels like it's at a standstill. It never feels like it's not happening, or it's not about to happen, or it's not inevitable. That's the word. When you're here, it's inevitable. And it's just this juicy, never-ending stream of positive momentum and unfolding path towards what you want. Because it never stops. There's no destination. Ever, 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 there is no destination. Presence is the cure. Connection. That's day one. Connection solves it. You're feeling impatient, you're not connected. You're feeling angry, you're not connected. You're feeling scarcity, you're not connected. You're scared it's not going to work out, you're not connected. You're worrying when it's going to come through or how it's going to come through, you're not connected. That's why connection was day one, because that is the catch-all concept that I'm talking about. I'm glad that clarified everything for you. And this is the codependency of people putting their faith in things that are unstable, like your freaking bank accounts. That's what creates, it's not here yet, it's not here yet. Okay, fine, I got money, now I'm good for 1 second. It's not here yet, it's here. That's what creates the instability. That's why it's like, stop worshiping money. It flows. It flows in and it flows out. It circulates, it moves. It's not stationary. So that is where your faith, where you are putting your faith, matters so much. If I'm putting my faith in God, well, then it's like God level riches, God level results, God level wealth. What does God's wealth looks like? Aren't you concerned with that? Then go there. Then seek that. Then get curious about that. What's over there? Go spend some time contemplating that instead of, it's not here yet, it's not here yet. That, you want to know why so many religious people live mediocre ass lives that are stale and boring and not something that you're interested in? Because of that. They are too focused on earth. They don't even realize that they are focused on muggle life rather than reaching for God. God is in uncharted territory. God is dwelling in the unknown. Do you understand that? So a lot of religious people have taken the whole be grateful for what you have too far. It's be grateful and don't ask for any more. God is over there with more. What the hell are you talking about? God has all this amazing stuff. Don't you think that the source that loves you wants to delight you and wants to shower you in gifts and wants your life to be full of good things? Not, that's enough. Don't ask for anything else. Why? Aren't you curious what life has in store? Aren't you curious what can be offered and what can be experienced? And like, how on earth is your deprivation glorifying God? That's going to turn people off from God. Living an extraordinary life, being delighted, being surprised, being blessed by God that will make people attracted to you and curious about what is that thing? Why do you feel so good? What are you doing right? God. Religious people living Wonder Bread lives. Whenever I'm talking about muggles or like boring, stale things that I'm not interested in, I always use the bread emoji and socks. That's like my muggle emojis. Or the broom. Boring. You get one life, you're gonna have it be boring and like, no, I shouldn't ask for any more. That's enough for me. No, delight in the things that you have in your life now. Delight in the food. Delight in paying your bills on time. Delight in the little things. Delight yourself in that. Of course. Being ungrateful and bitter is not going to make you a magnet for more, but at the same time, get curious about what else there is because God is dwelling there. You get to do both. Being interested in what blessings could come from God is not the same thing as being resentful or ungrateful or bitter. So I think too many religious people have taken that way too far, where they don't even realize they're responsible for turning people off from God. The lives that they model are not anything to write home about. What if that's the lifestyle that you're living? Why would I listen to you? If your guidance and your insight makes me feel bad, makes me feel judged, makes me feel criticized or condemned, I'm not experiencing the love of God coming from you. So why would I listen to you? This might be my favorite call so far. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad. I always think I'm too intense. And I I'm fiery. And then everyone is like, that was the best. I'm like, is this too much? No, you love it? All right. Probably your spice is what we like. Good. Instead of forcing yourself to do things and forcing yourself to organize it all on your own, connect to God first. Do that first because that's where it is self-organizing. It is a self-contained machine that you are continually connecting to. So it works out the order of operations. It works out your priorities. It considers your priorities. It considers your deadlines. It considers all of these things. God is holding a bird's eye view of all of these micro situations. And so the more that you connect to that, the more that it just looks like this effortless discipline. The thing that does require your will or your habit is the spiritual discipline of looking, of orienting, no matter your state. It's when you're sitting and you're numbing out, you can ask yourself, do I actually want to be numbing out or am I more interested in God? If you take more interest in God, then you get to see what God has over there. Then you get to see what's over there. So that is what this is actually in competition with. That's where your will does come into play. So the discipline is orientation. If you make this, instead of I need to force myself to do something, I am going to I'm going to fight like hell in those moments when I may not want to. I'm going to prioritize connecting to God just experimentally to see what happens. And then go from there. See what happens. Experiment with it. Because I promise you, you're going to start doing stuff. You're going to want to do it. You're not going to have to force yourself. Discipline means choosing the pleasure, peace, and ease. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like, think about it this way. If there's something that you haven't been looking forward to doing, you need to do it because you know what lives on the other side of that thing is important to you. Well, then when you're seeking God, it might grant you the courage. Maybe you get a dose of courage and inspiration, go do that thing, even though 5 minutes ago you may not have wanted to. But you went and knocked out that thing and now it's off your plate. So no, it's not always going to manifest as these like hedonistic, I'm indulging in all of these pleasures. That a lot of the time, let me put it this way. More of life will feel more ecstatic and more pleasurable and more indulgent as a byproduct of connecting to God. But it does not superficially appear to be hedonistic. So no, it's not going to look like go screw around for 5 hours instead of doing this thing that is really going to benefit you. Sometimes it will look like doing the things that you've been meaning to get to, knocking out a to-do list. Like there's a lot of stuff that comes from this connection. But then it's also going to steer you away from numbness. There could be moments of seeking numbness strategically. That's a different conversation we don't have time to cover today. I've already done a podcast on it. So there are times when that could be what you're guided to, but the point is the discipline, the initial discipline is not forcing yourself to do something. It's look over here. Connect, pray, communicate, feel for, investigate, get curious. What does God think about this? What does God feel about this? God, look over here. That's the initial discipline. Get familiar with this connection. That's what we do in church. Church is dedicated to spend more time dwelling here, and I facilitate that. We do it through writing. We do it through feeling. We do it through dwelling and contemplating. We do it through spending time, making time for it. Making time for the relationship. That's the discipline. Making time, spending time, dwelling in. Then it'll start to take the shape of those more stereotypical discipline things. Working out, eating well, taking good care of yourself, tending to the things that are important to you. That is what spills out. And pleasure can be a part of that, but it's unique to you. It's unique to where are you led? What's your priority in this moment? What are your values? This is unique and personal to you because God is individually focused on you. God knows your name, knows how many hairs you have, blah, 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 blah. So it's always with you are being considered. The fucking religions are not what's being considered. Your well-being, your desires, what's good for you is being considered. So it will take on different shapes depending on your unique trajectory, right? Your dharma, where your soul is going, what you desire to experience and explore, right? All of that is considered in this equation. If you like these, get in church. If you have been enjoying these conversations, get into church. No matter when you're listening to this, if you're listening to this months and months later and church isn't currently open, get on the wait list because this is my jam. I'm doing these every month. We're talking about different subject matter. We're getting our hands dirty with all of this. I'm helping you with the discernment piece. Like we're doing all this. Okay, I do have a big announcement about Apex. I'm nervous. I'm nervous to talk about this. So many of you know Apex is my golden child. It is the program that I have been running twice a year for the past 3 years. And I have decided I'm not going to be running Apex for the next year. It is going to be under construction. I don't know there is part of me that does think that there is going to be an in-person element to it when it does come back. However, there is another intensive that is going to be coming up instead. So it's going to have a similar structure where there's going to be a prep week. It's going to be mastermind style. There's going to be weekly calls. There's going to be, it is going to be discipline focused, but it's going to be God focused. I know that a lot of people are planning on doing Apex this fall. And so there is going to be a different intensive. Just keep your eyes peeled. What I imagine might happen, this is because I was getting inspiration for what I'm doing with Apex next. What may end up happening is that this new intensive that I'm running is something that will happen in the spring, and then Apex is something that will eventually happen in the fall. So if all goes well, if all goes according to plan, Apex will be back for fall of 2025. That is, I'm hoping that gives me time to execute everything that I have in mind right now. We'll see. This is one of those things that I've had to turn over to God, actually. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing with Apex at the moment, but I need to let it cook because something else is going on with it. But there's something new that I'm going to be facilitating this fall. I'm feeling into a September start date, or starting like September 1st. There's going to be more details to come. I think this is going to be September, October. If you are not on my newsletter, get on my newsletter. If you are listening to this in June, and you've been looking into Apex and that's something you've wanted and this sounds interesting to you, just reach out to me directly and I can give you more details and what I have planned. But if you're listening to this way, way, way down the line, it probably already exists and it's already a part of my product suite. Big changes are happening. Another thing that I'm also being called to do just in terms of business changes, I believe that very soon I'm going to be completing the Money Magic container. Money Magic isn't open right now, but I'll probably be opening that one more time, wrapping up with like a final module and a final mental mold workshop. That's what I think it's going to be right now. So that's going to get retired and then it's just going to live on my website and I'm going to be done with that. I feel complete with that container. So that is the other update that is coming up. So you'll still be able to get in. I'm just not going to launch it. I'm not going to open it, close it, or any of that stuff. Again, church is open through the rest of the month. Doors close on the 30th of June, and then it'll be open again in December. If you are really attracted to spiritual discipline and you're like, I want to feel more disciplined, I want to feel more focused. If you like that, if this is something where you're like, yes, 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 the next intensive that I have coming up, that's something that you want to look out for. That is all for now. I will talk to you all later. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.